So today's webinar follows something we've done a lot in our members' events and which people have really liked a lot. We have done poster sessions. So people prepare a poster and there is kind of a speed dating. Participants go around, have a short session on a specific topic just to present a feature of good practice. And we wanted to recreate that kind of an event today. So we have quite a large number of very short presentations just to give you an idea or an input on a specific feature or element on online external quality assurance, which is something we have all in some way or another have been exposed to, experimented with, tried out, etc. in the past year. So you might not get a full response to all your questions or ideas or fully developed during these short presentations, but then feel free to contact any of the speakers later on to get more information and more out of them. We have these little presentations and at the end we have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to have a discussion and questions from the audience. Your way to take part in this webinar is through the chat function, so use that liberally, both to post your own ideas, links to what you've been doing, as well as, of course, questions to the speakers and different presenters. So we have the brief presentation. After each one, we have time for maybe 1-2 quick direct questions on that topic or clarifications. So please write them while or towards the end of the presentation so we can pick those up, and then other more overarching questions can be addressed at the end. When you send your comments, I think many of you have found the right button. You have to select to all panelists and attendees. If you only have all panelists, then only the panelists will see your message. So please select all panelists and attendees if you want everybody to see that. We are recording this webinar and it will be made available at the ENQA YouTube channel and then a link to that via our website so that it can be accessed also by other people and at a later stage. So I think that's all from my technical side, and I think we are ready to actually start with the real content of today. And I will introduce each of the presenters as they come up, so we don't waste a lot of time for that. We will start with Shulpan Kalanova and Galia Rakhmitsanova from ENQA in Kazakhstan. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, we are glad to greet all you today and express our gratitude to ENQA for the organization of this webinar. Let us share an experience of ENQA in the training of new digital experts. Please, Federico.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. The pandemic and subsequent safety measures have led to global changes in all areas, including external quality assurance. The transition to online and hybrid audit format has had a significant impact not only on the external evaluation process itself, but also on the training of experts. And let us share some experience of ENQA in this field. In general, it's worth mentioning that online training of experts was held by ENQA before the pandemic through Polycom system. However, some moments while training experts now deserve more attention from the coordinator and ENQA. Next, please. Thank you. So what is modern? The modern expert is different from the past. While training new experts, some new qualities take place. The first and the most important one is the digital literacy, because it should be a digital person. And during the training, the coordinator should explain all the features of distant participation in the external review, including studying the university documentation on the official website, portal, or digital cloud, using online conference platforms to participate in the interviews with the respondent groups. And ENQA coordinator sends a developed instruction on how to use online conference platforms to the experts in advance before site visit. Second, the coordinator emphasizes the importance of proper time management for preparing for the audit and writing the report. The matter is that during the offline site visit, coordinator usually takes the full responsibility for the general time management of the expert group in order to be in time for interviews and different visits. However, when we come to the digital sphere, when it's a distant audit, an expert takes full responsibility for own time management in order to be in time for their interviews. And
Galia, sorry, I interrupt you just a moment. Maybe you can move the microphone a little bit closer to you because the sound is not very, very good. So
okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's better.
Yes, and I start from the second quality, that it's well-developed time management of each expert that should be emphasized during the training of new digital experts. A detailed program with time is sent in advance to the experts by the coordinator. The third is the ability to adapt quickly to various situations during the external review, because as you know, there can be different problems with the internet connections or different technical problems, or maybe a shift from one online conference platform to another is necessary. So speaking about our experience, usually interviews with the respondent groups happen on the Zoom platform, while visual review is going through WhatsApp, because it's easier for coordinator to show visual review by the mobile phone. The next is that coordinator also pays special attention to the training of the head of the expert group, because when we talk about distant participation, the head of the expert group plays a special role. For example, when there are two clusters of educational programs, coordinator cannot just physically be present at two clusters in one time. And that's why the head of the expert group is asked to play the role of the coordinator if it's necessary, and to follow the program and to direct all the experts. And the last but not the least, in a particularly important point in the training of experts, is the emphasis on the ethical aspects of external evaluation. The importance of keeping the confidentiality of the information received should be emphasized, and the risk of personal communication between the experts and the representatives of the educational organization should be reduced. Next slide, please. Thank you. And let me elaborate here on the ethical aspects and confidentiality issue. The study of documentation is also moving to the online format, and for these purposes, educational organizations create digital clouds such as Google Disk or Dropbox or many others, and they upload their documents there, and accordingly, experts receive access to this information, which is often confidential. And there is always a possibility that experts can use this confidential information for their own purposes. For example, they can share it or just save it for later. And during the training, it's necessary to carefully emphasize the point of maintaining the confidentiality of all received and seen data. For these purposes, all experts cite the code of ethics prior to the audit. And also, as I said, during the training, coordinator emphasizes the importance of taking the confidentiality of all the documents. And in addition, also some additional protection can be provided from the side of the educational organization. For example, they can make restriction on open information from the website, or there can be an ability to download documents from the digital cloud. I think that it's all about the training of new digital experts. We will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is indeed interesting, because you could say an expert is an expert, but it does require a different set of attitudes and skills to be fruitfully taking part in online visits. I don't see any questions in the question section. Yeah, now I have one. Good. What are the most important ethical aspects for you?
Okay, as I said, that the keeping confidentiality of all the information, because when we come to the digital area, it's more difficult for us to control that the information is not shared with someone else. And that's why during the preparation, during the training, we pay special attention to this ethical aspect. And also that the reduction of communication between the expert and the organization, because you know that sometimes organization can receive the email of the experts, and it's also vital to keep this distance between them, between the educational organization and the expert.
Thank you very much. Then I have another question, which is sometimes we have had concerns that we don't know really for sure who is in the room of somebody joining online. Do you have any ways, or have you seen this problem perhaps that you say this is a person to be interviewed, but maybe there are other people who are observing or listening and you wouldn't know it? Have you had this problem and have you addressed it?
Unfortunately, yes, that's a question that was mentioning, that sometimes we really cannot control it. And even if the person participates from home, we, of course, we cannot come there and check it yet. And that's why we just have to believe and to trust the organization, because it's in their interest also to successfully pass this procedure. And during the training of the representatives of the educational organization, we also cover these issues. We ask them to be honest, because that's for their benefit.
Yes, very good. I then also found in the Q&A section some questions. How about engaging more, let's say, senior experts, perhaps people who are older in age that might not have these full digital skills? Is that a problem?
Actually, during this 1 year, even over the year experience of digital participation in the external review, we have not made such problems because there are some experts who are elder than other, but they freely participate in it, because if they work in the university, they are often familiar with these new technologies as a rule. But of course, if some additional support is needed, coordinator is always open, and we are open via all their social media, I mean, the WhatsApp or Zoom. Sometimes we can organize an additional training for some experts who need help.
Yeah, I think that's very good. That you mentioned also quite early in your presentation that you've organized specific training or coaching, getting them familiar with the tools. So that could be a helpful step. Very good. Thank you very much. There is a lot of conversation going on in the chat as well, so please keep that going as we move to our next presentation, which comes from Ireland. We have Merit Boland from QQI and Jeffrey Cox from the National Student Engagement Programme, who will be jointly telling you something about how to engage the learners in the virtual visits. So please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Lovely to be here. I'll get straight into it. I know we don't have much time, so I suppose it's just important to set the scene to let you know that during 2020, QQI had 3 virtual reviews of higher education institutions. From the off, we were wondering how this might affect the engagement of learners in the process. So previously, when we were on site, our expert peers would have met learners during kind of World Cafe style meetings. So 3 tables with 2 experts at each table, meeting a cross-section of learners with a very informal atmosphere encouraged. We moved this to parallel virtual meeting sessions. So 3 simultaneous meetings with 2 experts in each meeting. We did still encourage an informal atmosphere, but we were concerned that there might be some effect on the engagement of learners in this way. So with that in mind, I'll pass you over to Jeffrey to talk about how NSTEP stepped in.
So the National Student Engagement Programme provides a number of training options across our network of higher education institutions. And we partnered with QQI to develop a student briefing which would equip learners to participate in the virtual process. This student briefing is peer-led by an NSTEP student trainer. The trainer is a full-time student with experience in quality assurance processes. Additionally, a student has participated in the same type of institutional review process, is invited to share their experiences with participants. This cultivates a comfortable environment for students to discuss issues and experiences. Aspects of the content are tailored to each review process in collaboration with QQI, and this includes, for example, the introduction of review panel members by photograph and what their role in the process is to student participants. Content also includes an overview of student engagement and partnership, what it is, how it can be meaningfully achieved, and the role of students in quality assurance and enhancement processes. It includes an introduction to the review process, how to evaluate and prepare feedback on their course or program, and strategies for communicating feedback and representing the ideas of their peers. This briefing lasts for about 90 minutes and is held over Zoom. It includes videos, trainer-led presentations, group discussions, and quality, and a kind of Q&A question and answer session at the end. And I think after the last paper where we heard a lot about experts, it's interesting that we try and encourage students to consider themselves an expert on their own learning experience. And this is really about giving them the language and a structure to develop meaningful feedback as part of the process. And I'll pass that back to Mairead, who's going to talk about modifications made.
Thanks, Jeffrey. So I suppose in addition to the briefing, the virtual platform also allowed QQI to do things that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to facilitate if we were on site. So we actually, for the three reviews that we held, we followed up with learners who attended, who met the review teams. So we did this by means of small focus groups with students to hear about their experience, and we surveyed them on their experiences. And that was really helpful because we heard, you know, what they found useful, what they found good about this virtual experience and the end step briefing, and where we might be able to make improvements to our process, both in terms of the virtual platform and, I suppose, just in mind of when we go back on site. And we have actually been able to make improvements to our reviewer briefing on foot of this learner feedback. So we can move on to the next slide. Thanks. So we're not going to go into great detail on all of this feedback here, but I can just summarize in terms of the feedback that QQI received during the focus groups and in the surveys, to let you know that actually the experience of the virtual process and of the end step briefing were overwhelmingly positive. That was the feedback that we received. A lot of students said that they felt that they were more comfortable in their own surroundings, meeting the review team. And they also commented that had they needed to travel on site to participate, they may not have been able to do so. So from that perspective, we had a broader participation than we might otherwise have had on site. We did get some recommendations for improvement, and one of those was to ensure that language was, I suppose, accessible and less academic. So that's something that we have built into our training for reviewers already. So I'll pass back to Jeffrey.
We also ran a feedback form attached to this training module, as we do with all of our modules, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive from students. A lot of students indicated that they came into the process feeling as if they knew how to describe their learning experience to some extent, but most of them had indicated that it had improved significantly after participating. I think that's particularly important, given that there was quite a broad range of students involved, including people who might be normally involved in these processes, but those who are also new to it. We can go to the next slide, please. One of the, in terms of working towards the future and what happens after the pandemic, one thing that I believe is certainly the case on both sides is that we are going to continue to work together to work with HE providers to facilitate student briefings for learner participants and collaborate to ensure that the content of student briefings is tailored to each review process.
We're also going to consider whether it might be possible, even once we're back on site, to retain some part of this virtual learner engagement. So particularly thinking about, I suppose, multi-campus institutions, whether in view of the fact that this virtual engagement has facilitated that during the pandemic, and whether we might be able to retain that once we are back on site. We're also, I suppose, looking at, as I said, adapting reviewer briefing to incorporate learner feedback, and looking at what other supports might be needed by learners to encourage their participation. So maybe look training for Microsoft Teams, for example. I'll pass back to Jeffrey.
So one of the things we certainly continually do on the NSTEP side, the National Student Engagement Program side, is to look at feedback. This is a relatively new training module for us, and so we've already made improvements on an ongoing basis, but we feel we're so far from the final product, so we would like to continually to review participant feedback to see how we can make the training more useful for students who participate, and also to consider what additional resources we can put. We have a student hub on our website with resources, and we are very interested to know sort of what additional supports we can create as we go on in the future to support institutional review processes. And I'll pass back to Mairead.
And that's it. Thank you very much. Delighted to be able to speak to you today.
Thank you both. That's excellent. Very nice to hear about your experience. Now, we already have a question. If you have any feedback on a possible hybrid approach already, do you have anything more on that yet?
We to be honest, we don't yet. I suppose it is something that we're considering going forward, looking at how we might I suppose incorporate it into on-site process. We're not that far along yet. I might pass over to Jeffrey because I know that NSTEP is considering remaining online with briefings.
Yeah, well, we have a broad training program, and faculty student briefings is a very small part of that. I think we've trained about 1,600 students in total for the academic year, which is twice the amount we normally have been able to train because of online delivery. And I think we've also found that there's a widening participation because it's more flexible for students to participate, just as if it's also more flexible for us to deliver. So we haven't come up with a plan other than to say that we think online delivery should really be a core part of what we do to broaden participation across our network.
Yeah, thanks a lot. If there are any other questions, put them quickly into the chat. We can also pick those up then at the final discussion if there is there is somebody writing in the other part. How do you encourage students to come forward and volunteer to take part in the student sessions?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I know it can be challenging. We ran one of our reviews in August during the holidays. That was not ideal. We are relying on students being interested in putting forward their student experience. I suppose when we were on site at lunch, we would usually have had our World Cafe sessions over lunch, and that was a big attraction. But we have managed to still, I think, it is through the institutions that the call goes out to students to participate. And I think they did a really good job in encouraging a wide range of students to participate virtually. But you are often relying on the goodwill of students to take part and in their interest in taking part.
Then I'll just add a quick little question here. Have you seen really kind of a qualitative improvement in the student input into the process through those, or as a result of these briefings?
We found certainly through the focus groups that we had, the feedback from students was that they did feel that they were much better prepared than they would have been had they not attended a briefing. So they felt, one of them even said, you know, I really thought about what I wanted to say to the review team. I prepared, you know, I kind of had my points ready, and the things that were really important to me, I was able to convey in appropriate language. So from the surveys and the focus groups that we've done, and again, it's a small number of learners we've met, it does appear that we have, and certainly the NSTEP data would support that. Jeffrey, if you want to make a comment there.
Again, I think it's something that, you know, students know they know quite a lot about their own learning experience, but sometimes helping them to break it into actionable pieces, meaningful feedback, is something that makes such a huge difference. And I sat in on the sessions observing them because it is a new module for us. And certainly what was exciting to see was students sharing best practice from different parts of the university or the institute, and being able to realize that they actually had solutions to challenges they were facing in that same institution. So there was a real practical approach. I thought it was really exciting to see.
Thanks very much, both. That's very nice to hear these experiences, and we'll get back to these topics as well at the end. So now we'll move forward to the next one. I'll ask my colleagues to stop. Yes, thank you very much. And we have Christina Svensson from ENQA Austria next, about how do you really make a visit in a virtual environment. Christina, we see it well.
Yeah.
Now we even hear you.
Very good. Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everybody, and greetings from Vienna. I'm very happy being part of the webinar and to exchange ideas with you. So as my time is very limited, I will immediately start with the content. Quality assurance was no exception and had to face the changing circumstances of the past year. And ENQA Austria has different procedures of quality assurance, but the site visit at the higher education institution is certainly a crucial part of most of them. And during the shift towards online quality assurance, our creativity was challenged, and eventually we designed special setups for special circumstances. Visiting the higher education institutions together with the expert panel was no longer possible for us. And however, the site visit is the time where all comes together and all the key elements of a procedure are combined. The experts engage in a dialogue with the representatives of higher education institutions, and the physical get-together transforms the previous paper-based and actually one-dimensional impression into a multi-dimensional overall impression for a co-assessment of, but most importantly, with the institution. So in order not to miss one of those crucial aspects of the physical site visit, especially the getting to know how the institution works, and to facilitate exchange between the institution and the expert panel, we looked for ways to simulate it in the setting of an online site visit. Finally, we were looking for solutions in the context of a re-accreditation of a music and arts higher education institution. And we found that not being able to visit the institution leads to a big knowledge and impression gap for the expert panel, as this type of institution has a lot of infrastructure as well as many formats of performative and artistic classes and research to be demonstrated to the expert panel. And therefore, we came up with the idea of a video recording as a substitute to the real in-house experience. So a couple of aspects of the site visit, of the online site visit, were put on film and provided to the expert panel prior to the online site visit. The official screening of this video material was integrated in the schedule of the online site visit. This was especially important because providing a real schedule gave, on the one hand, controlled the workload of the expert panel, and on the other hand, it gave the opportunity to the expert panel to reflect upon the video material together with the representatives of the institution. So in my experience, and as well as based on the feedback, this method enabled the expert panel to get an insight into the institution, and especially in its creative and artistic profile, as well as into the infrastructure. It also provides an additional dimension of exchange with a more flexible focus, rather than solely sticking to certain accreditation criteria and the material of the written self-documentation. It provides somehow the element of the atmospheric impression of the site visit, and Before I go on with the conclusion, I would like to give you again a short infrastructure tour provided to our agency by the Music and Arts Private University of the city of Vienna. And I'd really like to show you more, but out of respect for your time, here's just a short snippet. So to sum up, what can we say about this format so far? So first of all, the excitement on the experiment was mutually big. The expert panel and the higher education institution were equally open and responsive to this idea. The discussions on the videos during the online site visits involved different representatives of the institution and offered a spatial simulation of the real visit to the infrastructure. We also find that the videos can be adapted to different needs, different types of higher education institutions and different disciplines, different aspects of quality assurance, different demands of an expert panel or special infrastructure. We also see that the videos are not limited to the format of the virtual site visit. Those can be equally used during virtual or a physical site visit because they could give access to certain groups of people, maybe with very limited time schedules, or to infrastructure that cannot be accessible otherwise. So finally, the institutions can also use parts or the whole videos produced for this purpose of quality assurance beyond that for internal and external presentations, publicity, visual material on the homepage, or even on social media. So what we have seen is that recent times were full of great challenges and great opportunities, and by staying open-minded and learning together, we tried to make and still are trying to make best of it. So thank you for your attention as well, and in advance for the questions and hints.
Thank you very much, Christina. There is a lot going on in the chat, a lot of conversation. I saw also a hand raised, but please do post your question or comment in the chat. There are many questions that we will pick up. I will pick up at the very end to address to all of you on carbon footprint, so you can already start to think about your response to that. But a more kind of practical question, perhaps to you, Christina. How do you make all the records and evidence available during the remote on-site visit? And do you have a special regulations in this area, perhaps also related to confidential documents and such?
No, actually not, as we are using an internal virtual platform to coordinate all our procedures. We also uploaded the videos, so there is a working space for the experts and they were able to access all those videos. Yes.
There is another question, which is, would live streaming during a virtual visit with kind of introduction would be better than video recording?
Thank you. Very, very good thought. We tried to do that, and finally we actually selected the video option, and the times changed so much that we saw, because during our online site visit at this institution, we were actually in the middle of a lockdown, so streaming was not possible, because also everybody from the higher education institution had to be and participate at the site visit from home. So live streaming is a good idea, but under circumstances now, we couldn't guarantee that it will take place.
Right. Some of the participants have had that experience as well, and it has seemed to work for them. But I think it's really a question of choice and also how the institutions feel about that. I have a question related to that. How were the videos evaluated in terms of effectiveness by the panel and by the institutional representatives? Did they like this idea? Did they find it useful, etc.?
Yes, I think the first task was this add-on to those whole theoretical talks during the days and over the days, and the expert panel was very happy to see also the production team and then some technical teams, because you saw just an infrastructure, but we had also some videos presenting research concept and ongoing research projects. So actually it was very good seeing visually something different, not just those tiny little faces during the days. So yes, there was really a big excitement about that.
Christina, I have other two questions that I will kind of merge into one. One is about how can we make sure that this is really about the actual facility. It's kind of an honest video, not just the good parts and not the bad parts. And perhaps maybe then related to that, there was a question about could this be extended to other contexts where perhaps the facilities might be even more important to understand in detail, such as maybe medicine or other such subject areas. So how do you see those two questions?
So starting from the last one, I believe that there is a lot of transformation potential there. And I think, yes, that showing facilities, especially at institutions with a lot to show, could be interesting even in the post-virtual times, because some institutions have many buildings spread out of in the city or even in a region. So you could show laboratories or something, and experts also could pose questions. And then those questions could be addressed in the videos. And going back about honesty of the facilities, yes, I think this is again an issue of trust. I mean, many experts have, of course, seen also these institutions before, and then people will see those institutions after. And this is also, I think, a self-reflection. What do I want to show? And if I'm misusing the trust, what is the misbenefit on the long run for my institution? So I wouldn't. I'm not so much scared about that. I think the trust is big in QA.
Yeah, we have to maintain trust. We have to trust that there is the trustworthiness is there. Thank you very much, Christina. We move ahead to the next one, which is Jasper Delanoy from NVO in the Flanders in Belgium, who talks about blended, if possible, hybrid if necessary. So Jasper, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to share some of our insights, of course, with our European QA friends. And could I have the next slide? Yes. Like many of you, we have gone through quite an evolution in recent months, if not a revolution, because until recently, we did not have any experience with online assessments, apart from some procedures abroad. And maybe as a start, I would like to share some little anecdote. I still remember the visit of Charlotte Elam, who was also present here today from UKA, to our Flemish team as part of a staff mobility project. And it was actually mid-March 2020. And back then, she really inspired our team to invest more in online QA, especially when it comes to preparatory meetings of the panel. But little did we know that really a few hours later, we would go into full lockdown in Belgium and had to work online. So we almost had to grant your colleague some form of asylum, as Charlotte took, I think, the last plane home. So not in spite of, but really thanks to Corona, we took a leap in the dark, and we started a few pilot projects who all had positive outcomes. But the problem was that site visits were still a part of our procedures, as if written in stone in our frameworks. So as a result, our frameworks needed to change. And in correlation with all of our stakeholders, that's exactly what we did in the summer of 2020. And rather than focusing on mainly on the site visit as a formal requirement, we now focus on the main and original goal of our site visits, namely organizing a dialogue between the panel of experts and the institutional program. So they are now given the freedom to choose to the most appropriate formula. And online dialogue is simply one of the many options. So instead of adapting our assessment frameworks to reflect current circumstances, we actually made them future-proof and provided this additional tool of online assessment permanently embedded in our frameworks. Now, 1 year later, we have conducted over 30 assessments, partly or entirely online. We assessed new programs, but we also reviewed an entire institution abroad. And overall, more than 100 experts were involved. And throughout the process, we adopted 3 types of online assessment. We went fully online with some procedures. We also had hybrid assessments. And for us, hybrid is where some of the participants take part online and others offline. But we also had blended assessments where certain parts of the procedure were conducted fully online and others are conducted offline. And we are convinced that even as we emerge now from, hopefully, from this pandemic crisis, reflection is still needed. So I'm happy to share some of our insights, also based on the first outcomes of a spring survey that is launched in Flanders, I think a week ago, on online assessment among our experts and QA staff of higher education institutions. Could I have the next slide, please? So what are our first findings? Well, in fact, a majority, 83%, wishes to retain in the future the flexibility to determine the best approach to each procedure. So choose for fully online, hybrid, or a blended kind of work. Second, the further we go into the procedure itself, so we go from the preparatory meetings of the panel to the actual dialogue with the institution, the more we see a loss of trust in a fully online procedure. So 72% agrees that conducting preparatory meetings of the panel could be conducted entirely online. So they are convinced that building a relationship of trust within a panel is really possible online. But when we look at the introduction to the program and the dialogue between the panel, the institution and the professional field, we see more divergent opinions. For example, online dialogue allows a wider recruitment of alumni and the professional field. It can also avoid endless monologues often seen in offline discussions. On the other hand, for example, and this is no surprise, there is the lack of non-verbal communication, or also mentioned in the survey, and that's a new one for us or for me. There is also a feeling of they feel the lack of team spirit on the institutional side. So not only on the panel side, but in fact on the institutional side. But there is one clear line throughout the survey results. There is always a greater preference for blended instead of fully online. So we see a clear shift from fully online to blended and to a lesser extent to hybrid. So after a year of online assessments, we now realize that online does not simply replace actual site visits. Nevertheless, we are really convinced that parts of the procedure can go online where it has added value. For example, the first introductory meeting of the panel of experts and the dialogues with, for example, alumni and the professional field. And in fact, this allows the actual site visit to have a clearer, much clearer focus. Hybrid procedures, however, are more of a solution for when panel members cannot physically be present. So our motto for the coming year or years will therefore be blended if possible, hybrid if necessary. And to conclude, I would like to share one comment from our survey that I found quite inspiring. One of the respondents said the following thing: hybrid, blended, or HyFlex will be the new, or in fact the better normal in higher education, and that should include a similar kind of assessments. Do we not then fit in better with how higher education evolves in the future? End of the quote. So with this food for thought, I would like to end my presentation, and I would like to thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it was interesting for me to see that hybrid versus blended. I think we use those terms also mixed. We're still trying to understand what it will mean in the future. And I think it is very interesting to think about the best of both worlds, really. I think that's what we're all now considering and trying to find out and guess what will be the best of both worlds in the future when we can meet, but we can also not forget about what we've learned or gained from this experience. Are there any questions for Jasper about the NVO approach or experiences? No, not for the moment. So we'll pick up those as we go later on. And we move on to expecting the unexpected, a presentation by Ulf Hedbjerg from and Charlotte Elam from ENQA from Sweden. And I would also like to mention that ENQA is the newest ENQA member, an old one, and now again newly admitted as members. So we are very happy to have you here. And so the floor is yours, Ulf and Charlotte.
Thank you very much, Maria, and both Charlotte and I are happy to be here, of course, meeting you all. And even though it would have been nice doing it not online, that's actually the topic of today's meeting. So it's quite all right to do it online as well. Expecting the unexpected, we chose the title because there are some unexpected lessons learned during this year. I'm sure you agree. And we would like to talk a little about how what this could mean for us at UK, or also for the whole quality assurance in higher education in Sweden. Well, the unexpected did happen, of course, and I mean, from mid-March, Sweden was not spared like all the other countries, and we went online immediately. UKA, our agency, and the higher education sector, teaching, etc., etc. So we couldn't say that it was business as usual. No, it wasn't, but surprisingly little negative impact of the pandemic was to be seen. First of all, in the first few months, it was possible to change into the online formats. But now we see also after 1 year, almost a year and a half, that it's still working, and the fears we could have had about working like this for a longer time hasn't really shown to be true. We'll look a little into that. There are also some positive effects, of course, to do with the forced going online on everyone instead of the enthusiastic few who are always eager to try new things. Now everybody had to just adjust to the situation. We will say that a few of the main reasons here why this actually was surprisingly smooth, the transition. And I think one of the really important aspects is that digital maturity and the technical infrastructure was in place in the Swedish higher education landscape. So both at the higher education institutions and at UKA, there is and there was already a good infrastructure, a lot of things going on online already, of course, when it comes to teaching. but also in our processes, the quality assurance processes, together with the institutions, this was already an integrated part when the pandemic hit us. So the infrastructure and the digital maturity, but also a common understanding and a goodwill at the start, because once it happens, once the unexpected is there, you cannot start creating a trust and a dialogue-based approach. It has to be there, and the common understanding creates this goodwill that makes possible. This time it was a pandemic, next time it will be something else, and that's one of the important lessons learned, that the hard work we do, that we all do, trying to create this trust and this dialogue with the higher education sector, is something that has to be there if we are together to cope with the unexpected. Well, if we want to look at the implications and lessons learned more specifically by UKA, Charlotte, do we have anything to say about that? Please.
Well, thank you, Ulf. Well, we have certainly learned a lot during the past year, I think, both to how our own internal quality assurance processes function under pressure, and how we as individuals and colleagues handle stress and work under pressure. And as you heard, I have not been back to ENQA, to the office, since my return from the Netherlands mid-March last year. So, and Ulf, you stated that looking back, I mean, we were somewhat surprised that we managed to transfer all ongoing procedures to online site visits and all the panel meetings. And in some cases, this was done only with a few days' notice, but it has also had some costs and challenges. ENQA has had some previous experience of conducting online interviews, preparatory meetings, other panel meetings, but that has always been with groups, like the interviews have been conducted with the panel being at our offices, for example. Prep meetings, smaller groups, we've had more online. And one challenge that we're still struggling with is that there is so much less opportunity to improvise once a meeting has started. I think that's something we've been very used to. So that is something where we are having a lot of discussions and trying to look for tools and platforms to help us. I would also say that one lesson is that we've had really great support from our leadership on different levels. I mean, not only sort of the hardware that we were all issued individual Zoom licenses and screens and cameras were sent home to those who wished. But I think as time has moved on, leadership has had much more focus on the more qualitative aspects of work and finding ways in which so we can support each other, different social activities online, of course, but also, for example, our group leaders checking in and having one-to-one meetings more often. And I think that is also something we've learned to do more with our experts. I find myself using the telephone much more often now than before. It is still a challenge to keep ourselves, I think, and our experts motivated and creative. And I think for for however long this goes on, with recruiting panel members, when we cannot offer nice dinners or coffee breaks and the chit chat and all that. So another important lesson is how to make use of each other, there has been a lot of peer learning going on with regard to all the different tools and platforms and sharing of good practice when planning meetings and activities. We have learned that there is always someone who knows a lot more than others within our department and within the agency. And when not to use Padlets and polls and quizzes, etc., is something we spend a lot of time discussing. So with time, we've been able to plan more for the online format, and we're currently getting help designing a specific training program for project managers within ENQA, handling digital site visits and meetings, and trying to be more innovative. And as was mentioned, during last year, ENQA was also subject to 2 external reviews, one government assignment on the result of the first half of our present cycle, and most importantly, of course, the ENQA review. And I think in both cases, we had gained a lot of confidence. So we really welcomed the decisions to conduct these online. Mm-hmm. And that experience also spurred a lot of discussions. It was good for us to sit on the other side of the table. So Ulf, can you please share something about what our experts and institutions have thought about us?
Ulf, 1 minute, please.
Yes, next slide. Yeah. Next slide. Okay, so very shortly, to give voice to our experts and higher education institution coordinators, we do every time after each round an online survey among those 2 groups, and it was interesting to show you just the last one, very last one. You see there are not many respondents, of course, but the tendency that we asked this time and last time we had the survey about digital meetings and digital site visits specifically, and you see that the result is quite good. I mean, the experts, of course, they have different views on this. We don't really have time to go into that, but on the whole, they think that it has went well, good and very good and satisfactory. This is the picture we usually see about the meetings and the site visits. So in that sense, also maybe no longer a surprise, but unexpected. We could have imagined that there would have been a more divergent view on this year. Next slide, please. And the same picture, more or less, with the higher education institution coordinators, quality coordinators. As you see, that they also have considered the digital site visits satisfactory, or good, or very good. These are 6 universities answering, but still. And we also asked them to see if the view on quality enhancement, so if the system, if the process supports quality enhancement within the university, and because we could have expected that it would have been less so this time, but no, they think that very high extent, or high extent, or to some extent, is a good result and is very much in line with what we usually see. So we should expect the unexpected, and we think that, as we stated, that a framework that is well supported by the sector, by the institutions, the trust and dialogue between the agency and the higher education institutions and other stakeholders, and of course the digital infrastructure and preparedness for what might happen. So the platform and the framework needs to be flexible and also platform independent, not meaning technical platform, but any sense of the word a platform. So we realized that well-designed processes is really the key to being prepared for the unexpected when it hits you, and it will again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulf and Charlotte, for your presentation. I don't see any immediate, there's a lot going on in the chat. There's been a bit of conversation also on whether to record meetings or not. So now it's your turn to go there and insert your views on that. So we'll move on, and if there are any questions coming also for Ulf and Charlotte, please post them and we'll see what we can do about them in the final session. So next, last but not least, we have Federico Moran from Madrid from Spain. So please, Federico, now it's your turn.
Hello, hello everyone, and good morning. Well, I am going to present a very brief activity we have made, just analyzing the learning adaptations by universities as a result of the pandemic situation. This last year, as everyone in Europe, the population in Spain was suffered a lockdown, and in consequence, universities were closed, and they changed the face-to-face activities to non-face-to-face activities, online activities. So the pandemic forced to do this, and what we try to test in this analysis is to be if in these changes proposed by the universities, they maintain or not the quality assurance based in the general ESGs and guarantee, especially the basic learning outcomes from students. So what we have made is not a very deep analysis, but just to show up the best teaching practices, to take good lessons for this activity. And well, those are made in obviously in programs of bachelor and masters during this academic year. So next slide, please. So the idea was to form a group of experts. It is formed by 14 professors from Madrid universities, experts in the different fields of knowledge, and experts also in teaching and in this area. We have selected a sample of well, it's about 15% of the total number of bachelor's and master's programs in Madrid offered by Madrid universities. This is the number is 230, and we have selected from different areas of knowledge, and also a balance between bachelor and master programs. We have not analyzed for the moment the PhD programs in this study. So we have formed 66 panels, and these panels have made hundreds of interviews with the different people involved in these 230 programs. So the idea is to interview not only the professors, or not only the centers responsible, for example, the dean or the vice deans of the schools, but also the students, to see how these adaptations have been validated by the students, if they feel that the things have been done in the good direction, or have been done not in the good direction. This is the idea. So in the last slide, please, some preliminary results. The study is ongoing, so now we have only a few part of the work done, but we have some outcomes. First of all, as many of you have said before, so I think that the universities have made a big effort with creativity and commitment in order to involve professors, students, managers, laboratory technicians, etc. So I think that this has happened in Madrid region, but I can say that it has happened as much as I know in all Spain universities, but for sure in many others all around Europe. We need to promote this more interactive and collaborative and participatory learning. This means that not only the students should be trained in doing that, but especially professors and also managers and laboratory technicians, as I said, need to be trained in this new activity that is in the past they do face-to-face and is changed to online activity. So the face-to-face teaching for certain activities, an area of knowledge has been maintained after the lockdown. We think that this is temporal in some sense, and if when this pandemic situation comes out, probably many universities will go back to the regular face-to-face activity, but some activities will be continue because they are, I mean, good practices, and they universities learn how to do it, something new, and some of these activities I'm sure, we are sure that they will be continue as a good practice. Well, it is impossible. It is important the increase of continuous assessment, technological tools. Well, nobody knew 2 years ago Zoom or some other of these tools that we use now for meetings every day. This is reflected also in the students and teaching activity. And then the last point is one of the subject that we have discussed not only in Madrid but also with other quality accreditation agencies in Spain is the professional internships. So the practical in internships in enterprises outside the university. Well, this is a face-to-face. This is something which has been carried out in situ, in the place, and some of these internships can move to do it remotely in online activity. Some of them can be done, some of them, well, cannot be done. It depends on very much of the kind. The same happens with the laboratories practices. In, for example, a laboratory in chemistry or biochemistry, for example, is difficult to move for online activities. So universities are making a big effort to make this in the lab. So this cannot be done online. But some other activities of training in labs can, in some sense, do online. And there is a big study and effort trying to give solutions to this. So the idea of professional internships carried out remotely, so is something that can be done, and we are studying in this. Well, is one, as I said, this is just a very so the study is ongoing now, so we don't have the final conclusions, but we will publish all this study in our web page, just to offer other agencies and other the university and the higher education system all over Europe, well, good practices that can be derived from this activity taken from the Madrid universities. And that's this is all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Federico. Thank you. As you think about your questions to Federico and for the final discussion, I had a question in the Q&A for Ulf, and Ulf has already agreed to respond to that. It's about language, translation issues. Was that a problem? How did you address that? Ulf, please.
Actually, no, because my answer was really that we haven't this year or through the last year had any need for this. When we use international experts, they're usually from the Nordic Scandinavian countries, meaning that we can use Scandinavian as a common language, which is a bit particular, but that's what we do. So unfortunately, I cannot contribute to the situation where you actually have a language problem.
We've seen actually many participants commenting in the chat that they use the Zoom at least allows for this interpretation in real time, and that seems to be working very well. We have used that also for ENQA's own review processes, and it has indeed worked quite well in that sense. So we don't see actually from the ENQA's own experience, we see that it actually even works better and in an easier way online than in person. Because often in-person meeting, people don't have the headphones, and so it's done in a consecutive interpretation, so we need a lot more time, whereas in the online visits, it's usually done in the same time. Okay, there are now many questions for the discussion, so if I can ask all the presenters to put their videos on, so then I also see when you raise your hand that you'd like to comment on a specific question. We will not ask everybody to comment on everything, as you can imagine, but I will start with one of the first questions. Jasper, this is not for you because you've actually already responded to that, but for those who have not addressed this question yet, are you planning to go back face-to-face fully when it's possible? Are you considering or thinking about a hybrid, blended, whatever, a different way of doing this, or even remaining totally online? Ulf.
Yes, we jump quickly at the question. We have decided, first of all, we have decided to continue online as now, and the discussion is now very vivid against what parts we should keep when we go back to some kind of normal. We don't plan to go back to anything face-to-face 100%. But there are different views, and I think it's very important, different views within the agency, of course, but also with our stakeholders and our experts, what parts of the process would benefit from face-to-face more than others. And there is no consensus, as we can see today. Views are differing. So we're going certainly for some kind of hybrid or blended version of this, but this is something to develop in the months to come, I think.
Thank you. Federico.
Charlotte, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, well, concerning the quality assurance and the panels, we have also a move for online visits, and this is it is maintained during this year at least. But we think that in the future, some of this part of this activity will be again face-to-face when the situation of the pandemic will be over. Hope so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have also a question on the workload. Has this been less work or more work? And how do you foresee that also kind of in the longer term perspective? Because probably at the beginning it's more work because you have to create things anew. But do you have any observations on that for you as an agency? But then also perhaps you've got some feedback from the institutions. Yeah, Jasper.
Well, we got some feedback that from the institutional perspective, the workload for organizing a site visit is less when they go online. On the other side, we had to prepare the panel better online than offline. So instructions, more meetings beforehand, and so on. And also towards the schedule or program. In the beginning, we saw a copy from the offline visit, just copied to the online visit. But during the first year, we changed that, and we adopted a different kind of schedule or program when we went online. We also divided one day into an afternoon and the next day a morning. So that took more preparation on our side to change that into a new kind of format also.
Thank you. Federico, and then
no, sorry, I didn't.
No, then Mairead, and followed by Christina.
Yeah, I think for us, in some way, I mean, it's kind of one type of work has replaced other types of work. So On-site visits are really intense because you're trying to figure out, okay, who needs to travel where? Do we have flights booked for everybody? Do we have catering arranged? Online visits are intense because you need to we set up a separate meeting session for each meeting to ensure that, I suppose it's just for security purposes, and that's really intensive. I suppose for the providers, it's probably a little less intense because we expect them to do all of the accommodation and catering arrangements for on-site visits. But yeah, I suppose it's kind of much of a muchness in some ways for us, at least.
Yeah, thanks, Christina.
Yes, I can totally agree on the experience previously shared, and I think on the one hand, the experts have more to do, but on the other hand, I think they are easier accessible for us for coordination of the online site visits, because again, they don't have to travel. This part is causes much less stress, and but all the site visits have to be transformed, and the online format has to be considered. The exhaustion, the sitting in front of a screen, and also maintaining and keeping the informal moments with the expert group. So I think these are the most challenging parts.
Christina, I will pick up on your last point, because that was also a question from the audience. How do you repair this unfortunate situation that all of this team, feeling like a team, that you get to start to feel that when you meet for the first dinner, you don't really know each other, and then by the end of the site visit, you know each other's favorite foods, and you know where the cat is caught. And how do you remedy that kind of lack of informal interaction in terms of team spirit and feeling of togetherness in the site visit? So anybody who'd like, Charlotte, please.
Thank you. Yes, as I mentioned previously, that is really where we are now. And I think it's been good that individual project managers within our agency have been able to sort of experiment a little with this and see. And like, so one thing now is that we always try to open the meetings with a panel quite early, like maybe 20 minutes early, and have the chit chat before the meeting starts, instead of trying to ask everyone to stay on and have special meetings, just informal meetings. So that has been one idea, but it's really something we're working at. And I think, I mean, as we've all talked about, it's been a great understanding from all parts of the sector, from the institutions and from the experts about the situation. So people have been really, I think, trying hard. And as I also mentioned, another tip is that use the telephone. Check in with panel members beforehand, one-on-one meetings, and ask if they have questions.
Thank you. Christina.
We also call for special communication formats and everything, but I think two main parts are that we have structured the pre-working part with the expert panel before the site visit. We have split it into separate different meetings, so that the expert panel has more time to get to know each other, see each other's faces, not just one time, but maybe 2, 3, 4 times, depending on the extensiveness of the project. But also, this is actually a point we have been explicitly asked by the expert panels, like, please, could you include more time slots for an informal round? We always or try to start the morning with a 20 minutes coffee break, and then talking about the pandemic or the weather or something. So we try to not to get into the discussion immediately, but it's hard, yeah.
I think that's nice. We also, with the ENQA reviews, what we do is we send a survival parcel with, of course, documents, but then also some goodies, some chocolates perhaps to the panel members. And then they find it very exciting. The first we said, oh, we can open it all together. So everybody's sitting at the screen, they eat the same chocolates. I mean, it can be something as little as that. So they feel they are part of the group just by eating exactly the same chocolates together. So that's a little tip as well. IQAA, you'd like to comment on that, and then I let Ulf to have a brief comment as well.
In general, we agree with our colleagues that it's really important to make this feeling of a team of the experts, and we also try to support this feeling among them. And we do it with the pre-conferences also. Sometimes when it's necessary, we provide several meetings, we organize several meetings for them to make an acquaintance. And sometimes it happens that some experts already know each other because they work in the similar spheres. And it's also very great to see how they, when, for example, there is a time for lunch, they can take their cups with coffee and just talk about anything and discuss everything. And we also try to create WhatsApp group for them where they can discuss everything during the audit and even sometimes after that.
Yeah.
So it's really important. Thank you.
Thank you. Ulf, briefly.
Yeah, I'd just like to add also about on the workload issue that even though the online format permits you to distribute sessions, shorter sessions over several days or so, but the schedules at the same time, the schedules are usually very tight. So for all parties involved, it doesn't naturally come as the solution to spread everything out because you also have to do work in between. So that affects everyone in the process, really.
Yeah. That's one thing we try to advise everybody to say, take those online site visit dates as seriously as on site, meaning don't add a meeting when you have a half-an-hour break, because you need the break and then we might want to have a coffee together and all these kind of things. So we have seen that there is this problem that people think, because I'm online, I can also do something else at the same time. And there is a question in the chat that I'm going to answer from ENQA's perspective, what we've got the feedback. What would the experts prefer? We've had quite clear feedback that, okay, it works fine. Dedicated experts, they are ready to do the job online as well, because that's a service to the community. This is important work. They believe in that, but absolutely, they would really love to go on site, meet, have the whole package, travel across Europe, etc. So I think there is a lot of the human element that we miss in that. And I think on the other hand, of course, they also see the advantages, many advantages in that. That includes perhaps thinking of the reviews in a different way in the future. So let's use the site visits for whatever it's the best suited for. And we don't need to go on site to look at documents. We can look at documents at home at the desk, but let's go on site and use it really for what is the best suited for. We can maybe make it shorter, or maybe use the time better by having covered some of the other things online already. But it is related to one advantage that we've heard about, talked about a lot this year. We've seen the skies are bluer, the waters are clearer. We've reduced the pollution by not traveling so much. So there was a question quite a while ago from Douglas about the carbon footprint impact, and whether your agencies have looked at that, thought about it, if anybody wants to comment on that. Ulf, did you have something to say on carbon footprint or something else?
The footprint story. Actually, we have not been, I think that was an interesting question. I noted it before, and thank you, Douglas, and thanks for bringing this up, Maria. Actually, this is something that, I mean, that's the general feeling, of course, but we haven't seen any reports, any follow-up really, and that goes, of course, for many agencies, many activities in Sweden. So we can't really say anything about that. But obviously, since we have had everything online this year, no meetings at all in physical, it should have had an effect. Also, the fact that we changed offices ourselves, but we are still working at home, so there are no travels to and from the office either. Should have diminished. What will happen when everything is possible again? That is another question, and I think it's a much bigger one.
Yeah, okay. Charlotte, did you want to add something to Ulf's? No. Yes. No. Christina.
Yes, just a short comment. As an agency, we haven't done. I mean, of course, it is obvious we are not traveling as much or not at all, but it was interesting because actually this topic appeared now at the institutional reaccreditations. The experts asked the institutions how they are dealing and then what are they going to do in the post-pandemic times. So we see kind of a shift of interest towards the digital equipment and strategies, and also, yes, didactics and everything, but also the carbon footprint. So this is my comment.
Thank you very much. And Jeffrey, yeah, you get the last comment.
So I just, because our contribution to this process is a single contribution, certainly we've noticed that not only does it, I mean, it is easily facilitated online, it's probably better for the participants, but it's better for our trainers, who are our full-time students, so we don't have to send them for a half day on transport. It's more environmentally friendly, but it saves us a lot of money. And I think that, I mean, not to be cynical about the impact on the environment, of course, but it actually allows us to do more. That trainer that does that session in one end of the country can do another session in 2 hours on the other side of the country. So it's practical and certainly has a positive impact on the environment. I think we'll be considering that going forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants, and thank you for the panelists. I think we've covered a lot of ground, touched upon a lot of things. And if nothing else, I think, well, of course, we've got a lot of interesting information. But in addition, of course, I think we've also got confirmation that we are, at the end, we're all in the same boat. We're all struggling with similar issues and trying to find good solutions to very similar problems. So I think all this sharing is very important, and I encourage you to get in contact with each other. You've got some hints on what people are doing in their context. If you are interested, do not hesitate to get in contact directly with any of the presenters or with each other on that. And as we saw, there is a lot of interest on this topic, and we got a lot of good proposals to our call. So we will actually have a second session similar to this one on the 5th of May. So you are very welcome to register for that. The contact people from your agency have received the link to register for this event just earlier this week. But in case you're interested, just write to us at the ENQA Secretariat and we will give you the link, as not everybody might. It might be more complicated for you to get it from your contact person in the agency if that's not you directly. Thanks again for everybody for participating. We will save also the chat because I think there is a lot of interesting material there, but that we will not share publicly, that we will only send to those who took part in today's session. The video will be available so you can alert any of your colleagues who might be interested in that to that later on. I hope to see at least some of you. I know I will see some of you tomorrow at the General Assembly, and perhaps some others again on Friday in the webinar on stakeholder engagement. So thanks again and good luck for all that you are doing, and we'll be collecting more and more experiences and analyzing them also in the coming year so that we can more structurally approach this also in terms of the future and how to go forward. Have a very nice rest of the day and rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.